Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
5:07. Happy March 23rd to those who celebrate. It's O'Connor and Company this Monday morning in your nation's capital. Coming up at 7:05, Joe DeGeneva will join us, as he always does on a Monday. At 7:35, we're at stage 4 of the cherry blossoms. That's right. Peduncle elongation. It's everybody's favorite. Mike Litterist from the National Park Service will join us to talk about how quickly these blossoms are ramping up toward peak bloom. And then at 8:05, Andrew Galili, Senior Policy Analyst at the National Union for Democracy in Iran. Latest on what's going on in Iran as that government faces a deadline that the president has imposed on them for opening the Strait of Hormuz, or else. And we'll figure out what the or else is and what the people of Iran want. That's all coming up. It's Larry O'Connor with Beverly Hallberg joining us this morning. And Beverly, I mean, you lived in D.C. for a while. You're in and out of the region here for work, but you don't live here now. But when you hear about those cherry blossoms this close to peak bloom, you must be, part of your heartstrings must sort of get tugged a little bit because it's the best time of the year to be here.
It's the most beautiful time, yet the traffic alone on cherry blossoms, and I've seen them so many times, and they're worth it, but the traffic is awful. I think of the tour buses. Blooms and traffic.
Immediately go right to the negative,
Right.
So you go downtown and it's beautiful. It's a great place to walk around. Don't worry about the traffic. Just park a good mile away and go for a beautiful springtime stroll on the mall, right?
Yeah, my apartment's in the city, so when I'm there, it's easy to walk down. I am very excited that the president is going to be, more trees from Japan after the visit last week. So it's going to be even more beautiful in years to come.
It is. It's going to be great, and it is exciting to get amped up for the spring after the winter that we've had. So just I'm a little hyped about it. Just a horrible weekend for airports. If people were traveling over the weekend, I'm traveling Tuesday night to head down to CPAC. And I'm obviously everybody's concerned, not just about the TSA lines, which have been a nightmare, and we can get into it. And boy, the efforts by Democrats to blame this on Republicans, because Republicans have been wanting funding for the Department of Homeland Security. It's Democrats who have been standing in the way for over 30 days now. Now suddenly Democrats see political fallout, so they're trying to put together a little, mini package that funds TSA just so people aren't annoyed at them. And of course, Beverly, I've seen the headlines that Republicans refuse to fund TSA after Democrat proposals. Like, what are you talking about? Democrats are the ones that have shut this down. But it's starting to reach a breaking point when you saw lines like I did of over 2 hours at some airports with lines stretching outside the building. It was horrible.
And I'll give DCA some credit. I flew out on Friday, and there was 0 lines. So TSA was great at TSA or at DCA. So I'm not quite sure what they're doing differently, but obviously give them a lot of credit. But no, you look at Atlanta is one, Houston is another one where I even saw lines Denver, this week, video where people were in the parking garage that the lines were so long.
Yeah, I saw that one too. And one wonders if they're putting an extra emphasis to not show the pain here in Washington, D.C., because those images would show the futility of Congress and their inability to get this done over in the Senate. It's like, here it is right here in Washington where members of Congress have to deal with flying in and out themselves. I don't know. One wonders about that, why it's so bad at some airports and not at others. Or maybe they just had an extraordinary amount of people calling in sick and deciding not to come to work because they haven't been paid in a month. Meanwhile, up in New York overnight, we had a problem much worse than just long lines at TSA as an Air Canada Express jet ran into a fire truck on the runway after landing at LaGuardia Airport. This happened late last night. There's already images now coming out showing horrific damage to the plane. And we now have reports of at least 2 dead and up to 70 injured in some way. Now, there were 72 passengers on the plane plus 4 crew members. It had flown in from Montreal. Here we have the air traffic control audio that has been released overnight. Take a listen.
Truck 1 and Company, LaGuardia Tower, requesting to cross 4 at Delta.
Truck 1 and Company, cross 4 at Delta.
Truck 1 and Company, crossing 4 at Delta.
Frontier 4195, just stop there, please. Stop. Truck 1, stop. Stop, Truck 1, stop. Stop, Truck 1, stop. Delta 2603, go around, runway heading 2000. Jet 646. Jet 646, I see you collide with a vehicle here. Just hold position. I know you can't move. The vehicle's there responding to you now.
Is the runway closed?
Delta 2603, go around. Runway heading 2000.
Heading 2000, go around. Delta 2603.
Tower.
Truck 32, runway 4 is closed, correct?
Yes. Go on to runway 4 now. Proceed on runway 4. You have access. Frontier 4195. I got the word.
So you can hear what happened. I mean, the truck was asking permission to cross the runway. Air traffic control stopped, paused, checked, said, yes, okay, go ahead. And then chaos as the air traffic controller was telling a plane to stop first and then told the truck to stop and then stop. And then the crash happened. And then the rest of that audio is him telling other planes, okay, you got to divert to another runway now because of the wreckage. This was a Port Authority aircraft rescue truck and firefighting vehicle, I guess, were called for an incident possibly involving another aircraft. I guess a United flight, based on some reports, had like a funky smell or something that they had picked up. And so the trucks were heading there to, respond per routine. And then that's what happened with a Air Canada Express jet that had just landed from Montreal and was taxiing on their way to the terminal. Horrible. And as I said, we have 2 confirmed deaths.
And it seems that it's the pilot and the co-pilot. If you look at the images.
That's why I stopped right mid-sentence, because I was seeing that it was the pilot and the co-pilot, and I had just seen that. That's terrible.
And when you look at the images of it, you see that the front of the plane has been just smashed, just crushed from running, I'm assuming, a direct shot right into the fire truck. Tragic.
Yep. We'll see as this develops and as sunrise occurs in the next hour or so there in New York. And, of course, the NTSB has already launched what they call a GO team to go investigate the incident. And you've heard the audio. And obviously there will be focus on everything that may have contributed to this. And it may also have I don't know what the current staffing is like with air traffic controls with the government shutdown as well. So much focus has been made on the TSA. But there could very well be some, impact there as well, and that may have contributed to it, although from the face of it, there was communication. Clearly, they were all communicating up until the point that they weren't, I suppose. We'll look into it, but keep everybody involved, please, in your prayers as this morning develops, and as we get more news, we'll let you know. It's 5:15. Good Monday morning to you. It's Larry O'Connor and Beverly Hallberg this morning on O'Connor and Company. And Beverly, it's frustrating when you see the level of discourse that goes on right now. As I just mentioned, some of the reports will say, Republicans have blocked the Democrats from trying to fund TSA. It's like that's a completely through the looking glass description of what's actually happening here. And you wonder why people, it appears as though, and you get the sense that people are living in 2 different realities right now in politics and in how the news reports it. I met somebody over the weekend who found out what I did for a living, and it was really great conversation. This person was neither Republican nor Democrat, from my impression at least. I couldn't tell you what their politics were, but what they said to me was, I just wish I knew what was true these days. Let me give you a perfect example. MS Now, over the weekend, talking about the TSA lines, had the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Fry, on to ask his expert opinion about this. And he said this.
If the goal here was safety at airports, he could hire out more TSA agents that do an incredible job at keeping our airports safe. If the goal was keeping our streets safe in our cities, he would work with cities around hiring additional police officers and creating the kind of safety infrastructure that we need to keep people.
And Beverly, it's like anybody who's watching this is like, what are you talking about hiring more TSA agents? There's no funding. Your party has shut down the funding. There's no that the problem here isn't that we haven't hired enough TSA agents. The problem is Democrats refuse to authorize funding to pay the TSA agents, and so they're taking an Uber job so they can feed their families. But there's nobody in the authority at MS Now who leans in and says, "Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, you may be ill-informed, but let me help bring facts to the table here so we don't have a stupid audience." But that doesn't happen. And now this is why the conversation is so insane right now around this.
And Larry, you travel all the time, so I know that you understand the frustrations of air travel to begin with, whether that's delays, cancellations, and travel's just not fun to begin with. When you add this to it, and yes, there are those lines that are 3 hours long, horrific. There's also the not knowing. It's how early do I need to get there? How much time? This impacts so many people. And of course, this is happening at the same time spring break is happening. So you think of parents with kids. And what has really surprised me about this story, it's been going on now for a few weeks. I haven't heard Democrats talk about it that much. I really, or even the news media, other than obviously right-leaning outlets talking about it, it's ignoring it, like you were just saying, twisting it so it's not even accurate, saying Trump's not willing to work with them, which of course isn't the case. And I just know people at home are not okay with this. People who are traveling are not okay with this. Maybe some in the media aren't reporting it like they should, but there is a lot of anger behind this, and understandably so by the American people.
Well, the president responded over the weekend. Saturday night, he put out a post on Truth Social saying that on Monday, ICE is going to be going to the airports. ICE agents will be deployed at various airports that need the support right now to help the TSA agents, as he put it, who have stayed on the job despite the fact that the radical left Democrats, who are only focused on protecting hardline criminals who have entered our country illegally, are endangering the U.S. by holding back the money that was long ago agreed to with signed and sealed contracts. So it's interesting that the Democrats claim that the reason why they're holding off authorizing the funding for the Department of Homeland Security is because they're trying to force changes in how immigration laws are enforced via ICE agents. And the net result, and ICE agents have been paid. That budget's approved. They're paid through 27. So their insistence on holding this money ransom for modifications to how immigration laws are enforced has now resulted in what we're seeing here with TSA agents not showing up because they're not getting paid. And so now it's a nightmare for travelers. And Trump's solution is, let's move the ICE agents over there. So if your hope was to keep ICE agents from, being involved in and doing their job, that didn't really work out, because now you're going to have ICE agents at airport. And I actually saw Dick Blumenthal saying, great, now we're going to have these ICE agents. They're going to be harassing people at airports and pulling children away from their parents. And this is a senator. This is supposed to be a man who's taken seriously, Beverly. It's absolutely outrageous.
Also, isn't ICE already at the airport? Don't they manage
in certain respects? Yeah, that's
customs,
where immigration law gets enforced at airports. Yes, Tom Homan, who is the border czar and sort of appears to be in some level of oversight over all of these operations, certainly until the new Secretary of Homeland Security is installed, was on with Dana Bash to take a listen to this exchange.
With respect, if you're doing this in 24 hours, how well thought out could it possibly be?
Again, ICE has been at airports across the country for a long time. It's just expanding those things. Look, how much of a plan does it mean to guard an exit to make sure no one comes through that exit? We're talking about security options, and these officers are well trained in security, and they're well trained in identification. And look, we're going to do what we can to help TSA move those people through the line.
Dana Bash and media is saying, well, how could they? You only have 24 hours. How can you put them in place of TSA? And it's like, dude, they're chasing down criminals in the streets right now. They're going to be okay at an airport making sure the doors are secure. Because that's the thing. What they're going to do is put all the TSA agents in specialized positions on, X-ray machines and, various other things that they do. And then reduce, because it's a reduced force, you have ICE agents supplementing on some of the perimeter stuff and checking IDs and things like that. But to suggest that they're, how can you train them up in 24 hours? I'm pretty sure a trained federal law enforcement agent, like an ICE agent, will be able to get trained up in about 15 minutes.
And I think it's going to be more tame than having to bust down doors and, go find people. This is pretty much crowd control. Let's make sure the lines are in order. Let's make sure people go smoothly. Because think about it. When you do have lines that are 3 hours long and are, I guess, circling around the airport, even into the parking garage, that can get pretty unruly. It can be confusing for people. And so they're there to assist. I love the chess move by Trump as well, because it also signals so much that he's making this move.
Yeah, well spotted. I think you're right. And I predict this is going to get resolved by the end of the week. I had said by Easter time travel, which is basically in about 2 weeks, and I'm pretty sure this will be it. This is reaching ahead, and Democrats, I think, want nothing to do with this at this point. You would think after the 2 terror attacks we had last weekend that they would have resolved it, but no, it took the lines at the airport, I think, and then we're going to move forward. It's 5:23.
Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
Good morning, 5:37, this Monday, 23rd day of March. Thanks for tuning into O'Connor and Company. Coming up at 7:05, Joe DeGenevo will get his reflections on the passing of Robert Mueller. At 7:35, Mike Litterist of the National Park Service talk about how close we are to peak blossom here with the cherry blossom. Stage 4 has been achieved. 8:05, Andrew Galili, Senior Policy Analyst at the National Union for Democracy in Iran, NUFDI, the kids like to call it. It's Larry O'Connor with Beverly Hallberg. Good morning, Beverly.
Good morning. It's great to be here.
The president has announced a Christopher Columbus statue to be erected, and has been erected, on the grounds of the White House. It's right in front of the Eisenhower building. If anyone's ever been on the grounds, it's the space between the well, actually, now I'm looking at the sidewalk here. This might be facing the street in front of the Eisenhower building, but it's not an area where you can get to unless you pass through Secret Service and you've been invited, I can tell you that. But it's a replica statue of Christopher Columbus that the original had been installed in Baltimore, and it was torn down during the George Floyd Black Lives Matter protests of 2020. Now, I want to tell you how CNN has reported this statue's existence now in Washington, D.C. A statue of Christopher Columbus has been erected outside of an ornate federal office building on the White House grounds, the latest sign of the Trump administration's efforts to reshape cultural and historical representations across the Capitol. When the mob tore down these statues, was the CNN saying that it was a effort to reshape cultural and historical representations across the nation? Fascinating.
The change here is that Donald Trump is the president, and anything that he wants to do, of course, there's some Trump derangement syndrome with that. But even like the description, how they talk the ornate building, just the words that they're using to try to downplay this as an elitist perspective and putting the statue up.
And the statue was torn down in 2020. So here we are, he probably ordered this thing done last year. So 5 years later, he is merely restoring what had been there for over 100 years. And the news is that Trump is in some way violating norms and shifting the culture. The culture had the reshaped culture instituted by the mob. Nobody elected the mob who decided to tear down the Christopher Columbus statue. And again, the perspective here is amazing. By the way, the more language in the article. Columbus has long been a contentious figure in history for his treatment of indigenous communities and for his role ushering in European colonization in the Americas. You know, the thing that brought about the existence of the United States of America in the first place, and the First Amendment freedom of speech and freedom of the press rights that CNN enjoys on a regular basis. Yeah, those horrible European colonization ideas from Christopher Columbus. It's just,
and I think
it was written by a graduate student, I think, at a liberal arts college.
with some chat GPT included in that as well,
Yeah.
I'm sure. But this also is coinciding, of course, with the 250th celebration of America. And what Donald Trump is doing is bringing back honor to not just our founding fathers, but obviously the origins of the country itself. And when I think about that whole era of tearing down statues, you don't hear about that happening anymore. But if you have an issue with history or a specific statue, there are ways to go about getting things removed.
Yeah.
And of course, the way they went about it was all wrong. It's actually called vandalism.
Thank you.
Yeah, vandalism is what was happening. It was a crime. And I love that we're restoring these statues, monuments, etc., to the history of our country.
The real scandal here is that the city of Baltimore didn't do this. The vandals, the mob, the rioters, they went and they wrenched this statue down from its pedestal, carried it to Baltimore Harbor, and tossed it into the harbor. And 5 years later, 6 years later, the city government in Baltimore and the governor of Maryland did not order the statue replaced. And nobody, of course, went to jail for that vandalism. And here's Donald Trump symbolically, but also quite substantially restoring order here and restoring basic norms. You know, you always hear how Trump is destroying norms. No, this is the restoration of a norm. What other thing, by the way, is you read the article on CNN decides to inject in here, Columbus has long been a contentious figure in history for his treatment of indigenous communities. It's interesting, Beverly, I just went and I pulled up the official biography on the CNN website for their legal analyst, Jeffrey Toobin. And as you breeze through all of the career high points and accolades for Jeffrey Toobin, you know, if you ask any normal person who even knows who Jeffrey Toobin is, what do you think the first thing that pops into your mind when you think about Jeffrey Toobin, CNN? I mean,
I actually don't want to say what pops into my mind, which is the problem.
I feel bad
I don't think I can say that on air.
Presented it to you here because he had a bit of a scandal of his own, didn't he?
Yeah,
and yet when you look, I'm looking through his bio. CNN wrote his bio here. Jeffrey Toobin, chief legal analyst, CNN, staff writer for The New Yorker. His book, The Oath, the Obama White House and the Supreme Court. Toobin, also a noted lecturer, several things. Yeah, they still haven't gotten to the one thing everyone knows about him. Previously, here it is. Yeah, this has got to be it. Previously, Toobin served as an assistant U.S. attorney in Brooklyn. Nope, that's not it. That's not the thing. Yeah, it's funny. When they write about their people, they don't, highlight, all of the negative things that certainly come to mind. But for Christopher Columbus, no, you better throw that in there. You better make sure everybody knows that he murdered people. He was a mass murderer because of blankets with smallpox or something like that, how they've rewritten history. It's just outrageous.
Well, I do think we're allowed to celebrate Columbus Day again, right? It's not Indigenous People Day.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
We've got Columbus Day. We've got Columbus statues. The one thing that you can't do, and you really shouldn't do, is celebrate Jeffrey Toobin hour at work. That definitely not appropriate.
I'm going to pass on that one. Yeah.
Good call. Good call.
I'm willing to pass.
It's 5:43. Larry O'Connor with Beverly Hallberg. Beverly, I'm glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here. Beverly Hallberg is a media consultant extraordinaire. She does great work here in D.C. with politicians, with think tanks and various political action committees, independent women, lots of different groups, and we have many mutual friends. We've done media together for many years. And one thing that I rely on you for, Beverly, is that you keep me sort of in line. You keep me in check because I could go off the rails and canceled at any moment. And this next segment is fraught with danger. So you're going to have to run interference for me on this, all right? Because I recognize that women, fairly or unfairly, probably unfairly, are harshly judged in the media, especially if they're in politics, in a way that men are not similarly judged. I think that's fair to say, based on what they wear, what their appearance is. You're right. Abigail Spanberger, first female governor of Virginia. She is, becoming the butt of some jokes and some uncharitable memes, let's say, over a media appearance, an impromptu media appearance that she provided in a parking lot, speaking with the media, talking about her brackets, her March Madness brackets, because she's kind of an awkward individual, I think it's fair to say. She was very packaged and very controlled and very sort of she was
you're struggling to get this out, Larry. I feel like you just need to say it. What are you
Let me
thinking?
just say, her performance
say
here, this is very different than the Abigail Spanberger you saw on the campaign trail and depicted in the very protected, produced television commercials and media appearances that she had. She was just and she just acted weird. She didn't look normal. She had this very weird mannerism that she did with her hands, where she had them clasped with her fingers stitched together, like you would, but then she twists them and she looks like a witch. Okay, yes. I'll just say it. She looks like a witch.
And there were a lot of memes about "I'll get you, my pretty," of course, the Wizard of Oz comparison. Yes. And I'm glad you brought up the hand gestures, because I know people are pointing out that from the profile, her nose is substantial, but it was more, in my opinion, about the way she was holding her hands and just like limp wrists and shrugging her shoulders in. It was a very awkward body position, and I view it more as a mannerism, the word that you use, than how she looks.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. See, you can focus on the mannerism.
Mannerism.
Although, let's get back to the nose for a second, shall we?
Because for sure. Let's do it.
That's a hell of a honker she's got.
And there it is. You were just ready.
You just don't see her in profile very often. I look at this and it's like, wow, the media really did protect her during that campaign, because Winsome Sears, an extraordinarily beautiful woman, just side-by-side comparison here, it's not even close. But, I mean, that nose has its own zip code. That is gigantic. When she turns profile, it's like, where the hell did that thing come from? Unless it's all the lies she's been telling, and now she's got the Pinocchio effect. That could be it.
And looking at her delivery, I've noticed when she's on teleprompter, and of course teleprompter, you're straight to camera most of the time, so you don't get the profile shot. She actually, and people rip me for saying this, I'm like, look, it's not about her policies, about her delivery. On teleprompter, she's fairly decent, which, by the way, I'm usually comparing her to the other Democratic women, such as Kamala Harris. And she is far superior at communicating than Kamala Harris. And that's not saying much to begin with.
Yeah, that's a bit of a low bar, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a very low bar. But when you see her like this off the cuff, and not on teleprompter, not straight to camera, there's a, ooh.
Yeah. This was an impromptu, natural. This is just Abigail Spanberger just being her own natural person, and it's weird. And so take a listen. She was talking about the success of the Virginia basketball teams in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Here, listen.
Congrats, VCU. Go Rams. What a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful way to start March Madness. So Virginia fans, I hope you are enjoying all of our Virginia teams that are in the tournament, and certainly VCU kicked it off really well with their success.
Any insight on the budget? If it comes down to VCU and UVA, who do you got?
I did put out my bracket. In my bracket, I did go with some of the historical results back in 2019 when UVA won. So in the end, my bracket put UVA to win.
Oh, God, it's so awkward. So Beverly,
bad.
So she had her prepared thing that she wanted to say for everyone to say, and then you heard the press person say, okay, thank you, everybody. And then she's asked, well, what if it's between VCU and UVA? And then she just falls apart. She's not a natural, normal human being. I think she could be a robot.
Well, she doesn't even know a name of a player on either of these teams. She doesn't watch. She thinks this is what, I mean, you know what she's going to do? She's going to go drink a beer with Elizabeth Warren after this, and they're going to record it just to show how much they love March Madness. It's not authentic. She doesn't like basketball. Let's just be honest.
And by the way, if you are a big Virginia basketball fan and you were excited about that first round upset of VCU over North Carolina and UVA, as a second seed, you're waking up this morning to some pretty bad news, because both teams lost in the second round, and there are no Virginia teams in the Sweet 16. So a hell of a job there, Abigail. Let's not forget, UVA won when a Republican was governor. And now, well.
Good point.
Thank you.
Good
it's
point.
5:54. Just kidding. Ralph Northam was governor in 2019. I don't know. I thought they'd won it more recently than that. All right. I stand corrected.